I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Emily, for about 7 years. When we first got together, I thought she was the one. Smart, funny, confident, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. We had a pretty good life, or at least I thought so. We worked together in the same building, me as an engineer, she as a marketing exec. Things were smooth, routine, until they weren't. Lately, I'd noticed small things. She started being more distant, less affectionate. She'd come home late, excuse it with vague reasons, had to stay late at work. A last-minute meeting. But I could tell something was off. It wasn't just work stress. She'd been acting strange in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. She'd get defensive when I asked about her evening plans, or when I'd try to get her to talk about her day, she'd brush me off with a sharpness I'd never seen before. She'd call me clingy if I asked her to spend time with me, yet she'd disappear for hours and then get annoyed if I asked where she'd been. It all came to a head one night when I came home early from work. I'd been working on a patent for our energy breakthrough, something I'd poured every ounce of myself into. It was a game changer, and I was about to submit the patent that could revolutionize clean energy. I felt a kind of pride, knowing I was on the cusp of something huge. But when I got home, the house was eerily quiet. No dinner ready, no sign of Emily. I called her and she didn't answer. That's strange because she always answers her phone. I texted her, no reply. I decided to check her email and messages on her laptop, something I'd never done before, but I just had this gut feeling. I found some weird messages from a guy named Jason, talking about meeting up after hours at the lab. My stomach dropped. I knew we had a shared lab space at work, but I didn't think she'd do something like that. I looked through the emails and it was clear. They'd been working late in our own lab alone after hours. Their carbon capture analyses, as she called it, were just cover stories. I saw pictures she'd sent him, screenshots of her in the lab, close-up shots of her hands on equipment, all taken late at night. The worst part, they weren't just working on projects, it looked like they were doing more than just work. My mind raced, I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted, was sneaking around with some researcher from her department, someone I'd never even met. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How many nights had she lied about working late? How long had this been going on? I stared at her messages, her pictures, her lies. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a gut punch I didn't see coming. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew this wasn't going to be a typical fight. This was something bigger. I just didn't know how to handle it yet. As I sat there, staring at her photos and her messages, my mind was a whirlwind of rage, confusion, and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? I felt sick, betrayed, and completely lost. I didn't sleep that night, my head spinning with questions and a burning desire to find out the truth. I had to know how deep this went, how long she'd been betraying me, and most of all, what I was going to do about it. The next morning, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I kept replaying that night's discovery over and over. Her messages, her stupid lies, that sneaky look in her eyes when she'd try to cover her tracks. I was furious, but mostly I was hurt. I'd trusted her with everything, and now I realized I'd been blind. All those late nights, the work emergencies, her sudden obsession with her research, it was all a lie. She'd been sneaking around with Jason probably for weeks, maybe longer. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, though. I needed to hear her side, so I decided to confront her. I made her coffee, tried to act normal, but my hands were shaking. I waited until she came out of the shower looking fresh and innocent, like she hadn't a care in the world. I sat her down and just laid it out. "Who is Jason?" I asked coldly, watching her face for a reaction. Her eyes widened. For a second, then she smirked. "What are you talking about, Mike? You're crazy. I have no idea what you're implying." I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages and photos I'd found. Her face flickered with something, shock maybe, or guilt. Then she rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh please, that's just work stuff. You're overreacting as usual. You're just jealous because I'm successful and you're so focused on your stupid patents. That guy's just a colleague, nothing more." I couldn't take it. That was her favorite line, nothing more. Like she was some victim trying to downplay everything. I felt my blood boil. "Are you seriously lying to my face right now? You've been screwing him in our lab after hours. Don't even try to deny it." She crossed her arms, her bitchy smirk back. "Look, Mike, I'm busy. I don't have time for your stupid accusations. If I want to see some guy after work, that's none of your business. You're just insecure. You've been so obsessed with your patents, you don't even see what's happening right under your nose." That was the moment I realized she was going to lie her way out of this, just like she always did. She always had a way of twisting everything to make herself the victim, but I knew better now. This wasn't some innocent mistake or a misunderstanding. This was betrayal, planned, calculated, and ongoing. I stayed quiet for a few seconds, just staring at her, feeling a cold numbness creeping over me. Then I told her I needed some space. I needed to think. She scoffed again, rolled her eyes, and went into the bedroom. That day I couldn't focus on work. Instead, I kept thinking about how I'd caught her, how she'd lied to my face, her voice dripping with that bitchy attitude like I was the one overreacting. It was humiliating. I had poured everything into our life, into my patents, into making something of myself. Meanwhile, she was sneaking around with some stupid researcher in our own lab, acting like she was entitled to cheat and lie because she was successful. The worst part was, I'd started to doubt myself. Was I imagining things? Was I being paranoid? But then I remembered the late nights she'd been gone, the suspicious messages, her defensive attitude. I knew I wasn't crazy. I just felt so stupid for not seeing it sooner, for trusting her so blindly. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt the most was the way she dismissed it all like it was nothing, like she was the victim here. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and pure disappointment. I'd always believed in loyalty, in honesty, and now I was faced with the harsh reality that she had lied all along, that she'd been screwing someone else behind my back while I was working tirelessly to secure our future. I wondered how she even justified it to herself. Did she think she was better than me? Or was she just too damn selfish to care? Whatever it was, I knew this wasn't going to end well. I just didn't know what my next move should be. The next day, I woke up feeling numb, like I'd been punched in the chest repeatedly. The initial shock was wearing off, but now the reality sank in deeper. I couldn't believe I'd been played so hard, so convincingly. Emily, my wife, the woman I loved, had been sneaking around with Jason, our own research associate, while I was pouring my soul into the patent for our energy breakthrough. It was such a brutal blow. I felt like I was in some terrible nightmare I couldn't wake from. I knew I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not after what I'd seen. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time with a plan. I needed answers, yes, but I also needed to protect myself emotionally and physically. I'd kept my cool for the most part, but inside I was boiling. I wanted to destroy her, to make her pay for what she'd done. That kind of betrayal comes with a lot of rage that I'd never experienced before. I waited until she got home from her meeting, which I knew was probably with Jason. I wanted her to think I didn't know anything, that I was still in the dark. When she came in, she immediately started throwing a fit about how I was accusing her of things she hadn't done. She was bitchy, dismissive, and downright nasty, like she was already planning her defense. I stood there, staring at her, feeling my fists clench. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Look, Emily," I said coldly, "I found your messages. I know you've been sleeping with Jason. I saw the pictures, the emails, everything. And honestly, I don't even know who you are anymore. How long has this been going on? Weeks? Months?" She rolled her eyes and scoffed again, that same smug expression she always had when she wanted to dismiss something serious. "Mike, you're so paranoid. You always think the worst. I told you Jason's just a colleague. It's not that deep. You're just jealous because I spend more time at work than with you. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your patents, you'd see what's really important." That's when I lost it. I told her she was the biggest lying bitch I'd ever met, and that I couldn't take her bullshit anymore. I pointed out how she always dismissed my feelings, how she kept lying about everything, and how her work was just an excuse to hide her cheating. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she snapped back that I was just insecure, that I was controlling, and that I was jealous of her success. I was furious. I told her I'd had enough of her lies, that I was done pretending everything was fine. I told her I was going to leave her, that I didn't want to be with someone so manipulative and dishonest. That's when she got even nastier. She called me a jealous loser, said I was stupid for trusting her, and tried to turn everything around on me. Like I was the problem, not her. It was disgusting. I stormed out of the apartment that night, feeling more betrayed than I ever had before. I needed space to figure out what to do. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after she had torn my world apart like that. But I also knew I'd have to face the fallout, her lies, her manipulations, the shame of being lied to so blatantly. I'd never felt so crushed and angry all at once, and I wondered how I'd ever pick up the pieces of my life again. As I drove away, I kept thinking about everything. About her lies, her bitchy attitude, her blatant disrespect. I felt like I'd been a fool for so long. But now I saw her true face. The woman who I thought was mine turned out to be someone else entirely. I couldn't believe I'd been naive enough to think I was building a life with someone who would always be honest with me. That night in the silence of my car, I made a promise to myself. I would get through this. No matter how much it hurt, I'd find a way to move on. But I knew one thing for sure. My trust was gone, and so was she. The following days were the hardest I've ever faced. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, trying to piece together what my life had become. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of her, her perfume lingering in the apartment, her favorite mug still sitting on the counter, her voice echoing in my head whenever I closed my eyes. The betrayal had shattered everything I thought I knew about us, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. I spent most of those days trying to focus on work, throwing myself into my patents and the energy breakthrough I'd been working on. I figured if I kept busy enough, I wouldn't have to dwell on her lies or the way she'd lied to my face. But no matter how much I buried myself in my projects, her image kept creeping back into my mind. Her bitchy smirk, that dismissive attitude when I confronted her, the way she tried to gaslight me into believing I was crazy for suspecting her. Every time I thought I was making progress, something would trigger a memory, and I'd feel that familiar surge of anger and heartbreak. One night, I was sitting alone in my apartment, scrolling through her social media. I knew that was risky, but I felt desperate to understand her mind. I wanted to see if she'd slipped up or if she was still lying. To my shock, I found a new post, some blurry selfie of her and Jason, captioned "Late Night Chemistry in the Lab." I couldn't believe she had the nerve to post that. It was like she was daring me to see how brazen she was being. That was the moment I realized I had to do something drastic. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, pretending I was okay. I had to take control of this mess. I started making arrangements to move out, even if just temporarily. I rented a small apartment nearby, close enough so I could keep an eye on her but far enough to get some space. I felt betrayed, angry, and empty, like I'd lost a part of myself that I'd never get back. While I was packing, she called me. Her voice was icy, sarcastic. She told me I was overreacting, that I was making a big deal out of nothing, that I was just jealous and insecure. That she hadn't done anything wrong, just working late, just being friendly with Jason. She doubled down on her lies, trying to make me doubt my own eyes, my instincts, but I could see through her bullshit now. I knew she was lying. I knew she'd been sleeping with him and she didn't care who she hurt. That night, as I left her apartment, I felt an odd sense of relief mixed with anger. I knew I couldn't keep going like this. I had to protect myself, my sanity, and my future. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after what she'd done. I told myself I'd get through this, that I'd rebuild my life. But the pain was still fresh, and I couldn't help feeling like I'd been completely blindsided by someone I once loved. Every step away from her felt like a step toward reclaiming some piece of myself I'd lost, though I knew deep down it was going to take a long time to heal from what she'd done. It's been a few weeks now since I moved out, and honestly, I'm still trying to get my head straight. The house feels emptier without her bitchy comments or her sneaky smirks. Every day, I wake up feeling this strange mix of relief and anger, like I'm glad I finally got out but also devastated I ever trusted her in the first place. I've had a lot of time to think, to replay everything in my head, and I keep coming back to the same question. How did I let it get so bad? The hardest part is realizing how much I missed signs I brushed off or thought were innocent. Her secretive late nights at the lab, the weird texts, her dismissiveness when I asked her about her day. All of it was there, but I ignored it. I was so focused on our work, on my patents, on building a future, that I didn't want to see that she was already planning her escape route. I was too naive, too trusting, and it ended up screwing me over. But now I'm starting to see things clearer. I've been talking to some friends, and honestly, they've told me I deserve better. That Emily was just using me, that her success was a way to cover up her own insecurities, and that I shouldn't waste more time obsessing over her. I know they're right. I've spent so much time feeling like a loser, like I wasn't enough, but I realize now that her betrayal isn't my fault. I was just too blind to see her true colors. The worst part is the emotional toll. I feel humiliated, angry, and sometimes even a little foolish for trusting someone so much. It's like I've been robbed of my happiness, and I don't even know who I am without her. I still catch myself thinking about what it could have been if she hadn't lied, if she'd been honest from the start. Sometimes I even feel guilty, like I should have known better, like I should have seen the warning signs, but deep down I know that's just self-blame, and that's not going to fix anything. Despite everything, I've decided to focus on myself now. I've started hitting the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and even throwing myself into my work more than ever. My research on the artificial photosynthesis breakthrough is still my main focus. I refuse to let her sabotage what I've built. I want to prove to myself that I don't need her, that I can be happy alone or with someone who actually deserves my trust. Every day is a struggle, but I'm slowly moving forward. No, I don't forgive her, and I probably never will, but I'm learning to live with what happened. I realize I can't change her, but I can change how I react. I'm not going to be a victim of her lies anymore. That's why I'm sharing this, because if anyone else out there is stuck in a similar situation, just know that it's okay to feel broken, but it's also okay to stand up and start rebuilding. I'm doing it, and I think you can too. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal like this leaves scars, deep ones that don't just fade away overnight. It's humbling, honestly. I thought I had a good life, a solid partnership, but I was so blind to her true nature. That pain, the shock of it all, it's changed me. I used to trust people easily, but now I'm more cautious. I don't jump into things without looking at the signs. I've learned that sometimes people are just selfish and manipulative, and you can't fix that. You just have to walk away. One thing I've come to understand is that revenge isn't about hurting her anymore. It's about reclaiming my peace. I could have done a lot of things, dragged her through the mud, exposed her lies publicly, or even tried to ruin her career. But in the end, I decided I wanted to rise above that. I want to prove to myself that I'm better than her betrayal, that I can rebuild my life without her. I've started focusing on my dreams again, on my patents, on my research. I want to make something meaningful, something she'll never take away from me. This whole experience has been a brutal lesson in trust and self-respect. I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but I also know that I can't change the past. What I can do is control how I move forward. I've realized I need to be more selective about who I trust, and I need to pay attention to the warning signs I used to ignore. I've become more guarded, yes, but also more aware of my worth. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, trust me, I get it. The heartbreak, the anger, the feeling of being so stupid for not seeing it sooner. But you have to remember that your worth isn't defined by someone else's betrayal. You're still you, still strong, still capable of building something better. Don't let their lies and manipulations define your future. Stand tall, pick yourself up, and keep moving forward. As for me, I'm not perfect. I still have days where I feel the sting of her betrayal the strongest, but I've learned to accept it, to learn from it. I've learned that revenge isn't about punishing her. It's about reclaiming my happiness and peace of mind. I'll keep working on my research, keep chasing my goals, and keep proving to myself that I'm better than her lies. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most, finding my strength again and building a future where trust is earned, not given blindly. And if anything good comes out of this, it's that I'll never let someone manipulate me like that again. I'll be smarter, more cautious, but also more hopeful. Because even after the worst betrayal, life keeps moving. and I'm finally ready to move with it.